What if democracy didn't start where you think it did? We often credit ancient Athens as the birthplace of democracy, but long before the Greeks, civilizations you've probably never heard of were already experimenting with democratic ideas. Picture democracy as a seed planted in the forgotten soils of history, sprouting in unexpected places that might surprise you. These early experiments, hidden in the shadows of time, hold secrets about how societies organize themselves, make decisions, and govern. Why does this matter? Because understanding where democracy began and how it evolved can shed light on the systems we rely on today. So, what can we learn from these ancient systems? How did they shape the world we live in now? In this video, we'll journey through forgotten civilizations, uncovering their democratic innovations, piecing together a story of mystery, history, and relevance. It's a story that might just change the way you think about governance, and maybe even the future. Ready to explore? Let's begin. Long before the marble columns of Athens rose, democracy was already taking its first steps in places far removed from the classical world we often associate with it. While ancient Greece is celebrated as the cradle of democratic ideals, the truth is far more expansive and far more fascinating. Civilizations like the Phoenicians and the Indus Valley were quietly experimenting with forms of participatory governance centuries before the Greeks even conceived of their agora. The Phoenicians, renowned as master traders and navigators, didn't just leave behind a legacy of seafaring. They also pioneered systems where merchants and city councils made collective decisions, balancing power in ways that echoed democratic principles. Meanwhile, the Indus Valley civilization, with its meticulously planned cities and advanced infrastructure, hints at a society where community voices likely played a role in shaping daily life. While these systems weren't democracy as we know it today, they planted the seeds of shared decision-making and collective responsibility. What's striking is how these early experiments differed from modern democracy. They weren't about elections or political parties, they were about finding ways for communities to thrive together. As historian Dr. Jane Smith notes, these ancient systems remind us that democracy isn't a single idea but a mosaic of practices, each shaped by the unique needs of its people. So, while Athens may have given democracy its name, it's clear the concept had deeper, older roots. And as we dig deeper into these forgotten systems, one question emerges. What made these early experiments work? What can their successes and failures tell us about the challenges of governing a society? The answers lie in the unique structures these civilizations built, structures we'll explore next. Centuries before European settlers arrived in the Americas, a powerful alliance of Native American nations was already demonstrating the principles of democracy in a way that would later influence one of the world's most famous political documents. The Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Haudenosaunee, was a union of 6 nations: the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and later the Tuscarora. This confederacy wasn't just a military or economic alliance. It was a sophisticated political system built on consensus, representation, and shared decision-making. At its heart was the great law of peace, a constitution-like framework that emphasized harmony and balance. Leaders from each nation came together in a grand council, where decisions were made not by majority rule but through consensus. Every voice mattered, and no action could be taken unless everyone agreed. This approach wasn't just practical, it was deeply rooted in the Iroquois worldview, which valued unity and the interconnectedness of all people. One of the most fascinating figures in this system was Hiawatha, a visionary leader who, alongside the spiritual leader Daganowida, helped bring the Confederacy to life. Their story is one of diplomacy and perseverance as they worked to unite nations that had once been bitter rivals. Through their efforts, the Iroquois created a model of governance that not only maintained peace among its members but also inspired future generations. In fact, many scholars argue that the Iroquois Confederacy had a direct influence on the framers of the U.S. Constitution. Benjamin Franklin, for example, was known to have studied the Iroquois system closely, and elements of their approach, like federalism and checks on power, can be seen in the structure of American government. This raises an intriguing question. How did a Native American political system, developed centuries ago, manage to leave such a lasting imprint on modern democracy? The Iroquois example challenges us to rethink what democracy can look like. It wasn't about competition or individual power, but about collaboration and collective well-being. What if modern governance took more inspiration from this model? Could consensus building and a focus on shared responsibility help address some of the challenges we face today? These are questions worth exploring as we continue to uncover the roots of democratic thought. And speaking of roots, another ancient experiment in democracy awaits our attention, one that took place far from the forests of North America in the fertile valleys of ancient India. This system, known as the Ghana Sanghes, offers yet another glimpse into how early societies organized themselves, but that's a story for the next part of our journey. Now, let's travel even further back in time to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where one of history's most groundbreaking experiments in governance took shape. While Mesopotamia wasn't a democracy in the traditional sense, its contributions to the concept of justice and accountability laid the foundation for many democratic principles we recognize today. At the heart of this story is the Code of Hammurabi, a collection of laws etched into stone nearly 4,000 years ago. But what makes this ancient code so significant? The Code of Hammurabi wasn't just a list of rules. It was a bold attempt to bring order and fairness to a complex society. King Hammurabi, who ruled Babylon in the 18th century BC, wanted to ensure that his people understood the laws that governed them. To do this, he had the code inscribed on massive stone steels, which were placed in public spaces for all to see. Imagine walking through a bustling Mesopotamian city and coming face to face with these towering monuments, their surfaces covered in intricate cuneiform script. It was a powerful statement. The law was not hidden or exclusive. It belonged to everyone. But what did these laws actually say? One of the most famous principles of the code is the idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. While this might sound harsh to modern ears, it was revolutionary at the time. The code aimed to establish clear consequences for actions, ensuring that punishments were proportional to the crime. For example, if a builder's shoddy work caused a house to collapse and kill the owner, the builder could be put to death. These laws sought to create accountability, holding individuals responsible for their actions in a way that was meant to protect the community as a whole. Scribes played a crucial role in this system. As the keepers of written knowledge, they were responsible for recording laws, contracts, and disputes. Their work ensured that the code wasn't just a set of abstract ideas. It was a living, breathing part of daily life. Public announcements further reinforced this, as town criers would read the laws aloud, making them accessible even to those who couldn't read. This combination of written and oral dissemination helped embed the code into the fabric of Mesopotamian society, creating a sense of shared understanding and order. While the Code of Hammurabi wasn't democratic in the modern sense, power still rested firmly in the hands of the king. It represented a monumental step toward structured governance. It showed that laws could be written down, standardized, and made public, principles that would later influence countless civilizations. From the Roman 12 tables to the Magna Carta, the echoes of Hammurabi's code can be heard throughout history. This raises an intriguing question. How did these early attempts at codifying justice shape the way later societies thought about fairness and governance? As we move forward in our journey, we'll see how other civilizations built on these ideas, adapting them to fit their own unique needs and challenges. But one thing is clear: the legacy of Mesopotamia's legal innovations reminds us that the pursuit of justice and accountability is as old as civilization itself. Now, let's turn our gaze to ancient India, where a remarkable experiment in governance unfolded in the form of the Mahajanapadas. These were not just kingdoms or empires, they were republics known as Ghana Sanghas, where collective decision-making took center stage. Imagine a society where power wasn't concentrated in the hands of a single ruler, but shared among councils of elders and elected leaders. This wasn't just a theoretical idea, it was a living, breathing system that shaped the lives of thousands. The Mahajanapadas, which flourished around the 6th century BCE, were a network of 16 powerful states that dotted the landscape of ancient India. Among them, republics like the Viking Confederacy stood out for their innovative approach to governance. Here, decisions were made through assemblies, where representatives from various clans and communities came together to debate and deliberate. It was a system that valued dialogue and consensus, ensuring that no single voice dominated the conversation. Historical texts like the Mahabharata and Buddhist scriptures offer fascinating glimpses into how these republics operated. For instance, the Mahabharata describes how the Kuru and Panchala clans engaged in collective decision-making, with leaders consulting their councils before taking major actions. Buddhist texts, meanwhile, highlight the Viking Confederacy's emphasis on equality and participation, qualities that made their system both resilient and adaptable. But what made these republics truly unique was their balance of power. Leaders known as Rajas were elected by the councils and held accountable for their actions. They weren't absolute rulers but stewards of the community's will. This delicate balance between leadership and collective authority allowed these republics to thrive for centuries, fostering stability and innovation in equal measure. Yet, like all systems, the Ghana Sang has eventually faced decline. The rise of centralized monarchies coupled with external invasions gradually eroded their influence. But their legacy didn't vanish entirely. Elements of their democratic practices persisted in local governance structures, and their emphasis on dialogue and cooperation continued to inspire future generations. This raises an intriguing question: why do some systems endure while others fade? The Mahajanapadas remind us that governance isn't just about structures, it's about the values that underpin them. Their emphasis on participation, accountability, and shared responsibility offers timeless lessons for societies grappling with similar challenges today. As we leave ancient India behind, our journey takes us to another region where democratic roots run deep: the islands of Polynesia. Here, in the vast expanse of the Pacific, we'll discover how communities navigated the complexities of governance in ways that continue to resonate. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. Now, let's set sail for the rugged landscapes of the north, where the Vikings, often remembered for their raids and longships, also gave us one of history's most intriguing democratic experiments: the Thing. Far from the chaotic image of berserkers and battle cries, the Thing was a system of governance that brought order and collective decision-making to the Norse world. Picture this: free men from across the region gathering under open skies, their voices carrying over the wind as they debated laws, settled disputes, and shaped the future of their communities. It was democracy in its rawest, most elemental form, a system deeply rooted in the culture and geography of the North. The Thing wasn't just a meeting, it was a ritual, a cornerstone of Viking society. These assemblies took place in specific locations, often marked by natural features like large stones or elevated ground. One of the most famous was the Althing in Iceland, which began in the year 930 and is considered one of the earliest examples of a parliamentary system. Imagine standing in that space, surrounded by towering cliffs and sweeping plains, as leaders and commoners alike stood shoulder to shoulder, their fates intertwined. The sagas, those rich tapestries of Norse history and legend, bring these gatherings to life. In the Iroquois saga, for example, we read about how disputes were settled with a blend of law and storytelling, as each side presented their case before the assembly. The law was their shield, the saga tells us, and the thing their battlefield of words. What made the thing so remarkable was its inclusivity. While women and enslaved people were excluded, free men of all social standings had the right to speak and vote. Decisions were made collectively, with leaders known as law speakers guiding the process. These law speakers weren't rulers but custodians of tradition, tasked with reciting the laws from memory, a living library of Norse custom. This emphasis on oral tradition and communal decision-making created a system that was both flexible and deeply rooted in the values of the community. But the thing wasn't just about governance, it was a reflection of the Viking way of life. The harsh, isolated landscapes of Scandinavia and Iceland made cooperation essential for survival. In a world where resources were scarce and the elements unforgiving, the thing provided a way to resolve conflicts without resorting to violence. It was a system born of necessity, shaped by the very geography that defined the Norse world. The legacy of the thing didn't end with the Viking Age. Its influence can be seen in later European governance, particularly in the development of parliamentary systems. The idea of collective decision-making, of leaders answering to the people, echoed through the centuries, finding new expression in places like England's early parliaments and the Nordic countries' modern democracies. This raises an important question. How did geography shape these early democratic practices? From the open plains of Iceland to the fjords of Norway, the physical environment played a crucial role in fostering systems that valued cooperation and shared responsibility. As we leave the wind-swept landscapes of the north, our journey takes us to another corner of the world, where geography once again shaped the way societies governed themselves. In the Pacific, the Polynesian islands offer yet another fascinating chapter in the story of democracy, a story of navigation, community, and resilience. But that's a tale for the next part of our exploration. Now, let's dive into a fascinating dimension of these early democratic experiments, the role of geography. The physical landscapes where these civilizations thrived weren't just backdrops, they were active forces shaping how societies organized themselves. From the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the towering peaks of the Andes, geography played a pivotal role in determining who governed, how decisions were made, and what challenges had to be overcome. Take Iceland, for example. This remote island, with its stark volcanic terrain and harsh climate, might seem like an unlikely place for democracy to take root. Yet, it was precisely this isolation that fostered the Viking Thing system. In a land where communities were scattered and resources were scarce, cooperation wasn't just ideal, it was essential for survival. The thing brought people together, creating a space where disputes could be resolved and collective decisions made. Without the need for a centralized authority to manage vast territories, the Norse could focus on building a system that valued participation and shared responsibility. Now shift your gaze to the Andes, where the Inca Empire once flourished. Here, the towering mountains and deep valleys created natural barriers that influenced governance. The Inca system, known for its efficiency and adaptability, relied on a network of local leaders who reported to a central authority. While not a democracy in the modern sense, this structure was deeply shaped by the demands of the landscape. Roads and bridges connected isolated communities, enabling communication and trade. while local leaders retained significant autonomy to address the unique needs of their regions. This balance between central authority and local flexibility was a direct response to the challenges posed by the Andean geography. But geography didn't just create barriers, it also opened doors. The fertile plains of Mesopotamia, crisscrossed by rivers, allowed for the growth of large, interconnected cities. This abundance of resources and ease of communication fostered the development of early legal codes like Hammurabi's, which required a stable, centralized system to enforce. In contrast, the rugged terrain of ancient India's Mahajanapadas encouraged smaller, self-governing republics, where local councils could respond quickly to the needs of their communities. This raises an important question. How does modern geography continue to shape democracy? In today's world, where technology has seemingly erased borders, do mountains, rivers, and coastlines still influence how we govern ourselves? The answer might lie in the way resources and infrastructure are distributed. For instance, urban centers often serve as hubs of political activity, while rural areas may struggle to have their voices heard. Even in a globalized world, geography still plays a role in shaping access to power and participation. And then there's the role of trade and communication. Just as the Phoenicians used their mastery of the seas to connect distant lands, modern democracies rely on networks of trade and information to thrive. The ability to exchange goods, ideas, and cultures has always been a cornerstone of governance, enabling societies to learn from one another and adapt. As we explore these connections, we'll see how geography and communication continue to shape the way we govern, and how they might influence the future of democracy. Next, we'll turn our attention to another crucial factor in the evolution of democratic systems: the role of trade and cultural exchange. How did the movement of goods and ideas across vast distances help spread democratic principles? And what lessons can we draw from these ancient networks as we navigate the complexities of our interconnected world? The answers lie ahead. The movement of goods and ideas across vast distances has always been one of humanity's greatest catalysts for change, and democracy is no exception. Long before the internet or even the printing press, trade routes and communication networks served as the arteries of cultural exchange, carrying not only spices, silk, and gold, but also revolutionary ideas about governance. From the bustling markets of the Silk Road to the vibrant ports of the Mediterranean, merchants, travelers, and scholars became unwitting ambassadors of political thought, spreading seeds of democracy far and wide. Take the Silk Road, for example. This sprawling network of trade routes connected east and west, linking China to the Roman Empire and everything in between. Along these paths, merchants didn't just exchange goods, they shared stories, philosophies, and ways of organizing society. Imagine a caravan stopping in a bustling oasis city like Samarkand. As traders bartered for silk and spices, they might also discuss how their home cities governed themselves. A merchant from Athens might describe the Athenian assembly, while a scholar from India could explain the workings of the Ghana Sanghas. These conversations, often informal and unrecorded, planted ideas in the minds of listeners who then carried them to the next stop on their journey. The Mediterranean, too, was a melting pot of democratic experimentation. Phoenician traders who dominated the seas for centuries didn't just transport goods, they brought with them their unique approach to governance. Their city-states like Tyre and Sidon were hubs of collective decision-making where merchant councils played a key role in shaping policy. As these traders ventured to new shores, they introduced these ideas to other cultures, weaving threads of democratic thought into the fabric of societies from North Africa to Iberia. But it wasn't just merchants who spread these ideas. Scholars, diplomats, and even religious figures played a part. The Buddhist monks who traveled along the Silk Road, for instance, didn't just spread their faith. they also carried with them the egalitarian principles of their teachings, which emphasized community and shared responsibility. Similarly, the Islamic Golden Age saw scholars translating ancient texts from Greece and India, preserving and disseminating ideas about governance that would later influence European thinkers during the Renaissance. This ancient exchange of ideas feels surprisingly modern when we consider today's globalization. Just as the Silk Road connected disparate cultures, the Internet has created a new kind of global network, one where ideas about democracy and governance can spread at the speed of light. Social media, for example, has become a modern-day marketplace of ideas where people from every corner of the world can share their experiences and challenge established norms. This raises an important question. Are we living through another great wave of democratic innovation, one driven not by caravans and ships but by satellites and fiber optic cables? Yet, as we marvel at the power of trade and communication to spread ideas, it's worth reflecting on the role of belief systems in shaping governance. After all, long before globalization, religion often served as a unifying force, providing both moral frameworks and structures of authority. How did faith influence the way societies governed themselves? And how do these ancient intersections of religion and politics continue to shape our world today? These are questions that will guide us as we turn to the next chapter of our exploration. Religion has always been a powerful force in shaping how societies govern themselves. But what happens when divine authority intersects with democratic principles? In ancient civilizations, religion and governance were often deeply intertwined, creating systems where spiritual and political power flowed together in fascinating ways. Take the Hebrew Sanhedrin, for example. This council of 71 elders wasn't just a political body, it was also a religious one, tasked with interpreting laws and settling disputes based on the Torah. Here, the lines between divine mandate and human decision-making blurred, as leaders sought to balance the will of God with the needs of the people. The Sanhedrin's approach was rooted in a belief that laws came from a higher authority, but their application required human wisdom and deliberation. This blending of the sacred and the secular created a unique form of governance, one that emphasized justice, morality, and collective responsibility. As the Talmud states, the world stands on three things: on justice, on truth, and on peace. These principles guided the Sanhedrin's decisions, ensuring that their rulings weren't just about power, but about creating a harmonious society. In contrast, ancient Athens offers a starkly different model. Athenian democracy, while deeply influenced by mythology and religious rituals, operated as a largely secular system. Citizens gathered in the agora to debate and vote on matters of state, with decisions made through majority rule rather than divine guidance. Yet, even here, religion played a subtle role. The gods were invoked at the start of assemblies, and political leaders often held religious titles, reflecting the belief that the favor of the gods was essential for the city's prosperity. These two models, the Hebrew Sanhedrin and Athenian democracy, highlight the complex relationship between faith and governance. One relied on divine authority to guide its laws, while the other sought to separate spiritual and political power. But both systems were shaped by the belief that governance, whether sacred or secular, should serve the greater good. This raises an intriguing question: how do modern democracies navigate this balance? In a world where religion continues to influence politics, what lessons can we draw from these ancient systems? Religious texts themselves offer clues. The Quran, for instance, emphasizes consultation or shura as a key principle of governance, encouraging leaders to seek the counsel of their people. Similarly, Buddhist teachings stress the importance of compassion and community in decision-making. These ideas, though rooted in faith, echo democratic values, suggesting that the lines between religion and democracy aren't as rigid as they might seem. But as we explore these intersections, it's impossible to ignore the role of women in early systems. While many ancient civilizations excluded women from formal political roles, there were notable exceptions. In the Hebrew tradition, figures like Deborah, a judge and prophetess, wielded significant influence, blending religious and political authority in ways that challenged traditional norms. Similarly, in ancient Sparta, women held considerable power within the household and played a vital role in shaping the city's values. These examples remind us that governance is never just about structures or laws, it's about people. How societies include or exclude voices, whether based on gender, class, or faith, shapes the systems they create. As we continue our journey, we'll delve deeper into the role of women in early governance, uncovering stories of resilience, innovation, and leadership that often go untold. What can these stories teach us about the challenges and possibilities of building more inclusive democracies today? The answers lie ahead. While history often paints early democratic systems as male-dominated, the truth is far more nuanced. Across the ancient world, women played pivotal and often overlooked roles in shaping governance, sometimes even challenging the norms of their time. Take the Celtic Brehon laws, for instance. In Ireland, centuries before the rise of modern democracy, these laws granted women rights that would seem progressive even by today's standards. Women could own property, initiate divorce, and even hold positions of authority within their communities. This was a stark contrast to many contemporary societies where women's roles were often confined to the domestic sphere. The Brehon laws weren't just about fairness, they were about recognizing the value of every member of society. Women's contributions, whether in managing households or participating in trade, were seen as essential to the community's well-being. This inclusive approach allowed Celtic society to thrive, creating a system where power wasn't hoarded by a few but shared among many. It's a reminder that democracy, at its core, is about ensuring everyone has a voice, not just those who traditionally hold power. Across the Atlantic, matrilineal societies in the Americas offer another fascinating example. Among the Iroquois, for instance, clan mothers held significant influence, selecting leaders and even having the power to remove them if they failed to serve the community's needs. These women weren't just figureheads, they were decision-makers, shaping the policies and direction of their nations. Their role in governance was so profound that it's believed to have influenced early American political thought, offering a model of shared leadership and accountability. But women's influence wasn't limited to formal roles. In ancient Mesopotamia, priestesses like Enheduanna, the world's first known author, used their positions to shape culture and politics. Her hymns and prayers weren't just religious texts, they were tools of diplomacy, fostering unity and stability in a fractured region. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, women like Hatshepsut and Cleopatra wielded power not as exceptions but as integral parts of their society's political fabric. These examples challenge the notion that women were passive participants in early governance. Instead, they reveal a rich tapestry of female leadership, innovation, and resilience. Yet, as societies evolved, many of these systems began to erode. The rise of patriarchal structures, often fueled by conquest or cultural shifts, gradually sidelined women's roles in governance. The Brehon laws, for example, were supplanted by English common law, which stripped women of many rights they had once enjoyed. Similarly, the decline of matrilineal systems in the Americas coincided with colonization, as European settlers imposed their own norms and hierarchies. This raises an important question. What can we learn from these early systems as we work toward gender equality today? The answer lies in their emphasis on inclusivity and shared responsibility. By recognizing the value of every voice, these societies created systems that were not only fairer but also more resilient. They remind us that democracy isn't just about structures, it's about the values we choose to uphold. As we reflect on these overlooked pioneers, it's impossible to ignore the broader patterns of rise and decline that shaped their societies. From the Celtic clans to the Iroquois Confederacy, many early democratic systems faced challenges that ultimately led to their downfall. What caused these systems to falter, and what lessons can we draw from their decline as we navigate the complexities of modern governance? These are questions we'll explore as we continue our journey through the history of democracy. The story of democracy is not just one of triumph, it's also a tale of fragility. Many of the early systems we've explored, from the Iroquois Confederacy to the Ghana Sanghas of ancient India, eventually faced decline. What caused these once thriving experiments in governance to falter? And what can their struggles teach us about the challenges facing modern democracies today? Take the Roman Republic, for instance. For centuries, it stood as a shining example of shared governance, with its Senate and assemblies balancing power among the elite and the people. But over time, cracks began to appear. Wealth inequality grew as the rich amassed land and resources, leaving the poor increasingly disenfranchised. Ambitious leaders like Julius Caesar exploited these divisions, using populist appeals to consolidate power. The Republic, once a beacon of collective decision-making, collapsed under the weight of internal corruption and external pressures, giving way to the Roman Empire. The Iroquois Confederacy, too, faced its own set of challenges. While their system of consensus and shared leadership allowed them to thrive for centuries, external forces ultimately took their toll. European colonization brought not only new diseases but also political and economic pressures that fractured the alliance. The once united nations found themselves pulled in different directions, their traditional systems undermined by the demands of colonial powers. But it wasn't just external invasions or conquests that led to decline. In some cases, internal dynamics played a significant role. The Mahajanapadas of ancient India, for example, struggled to maintain their decentralized systems as neighboring kingdoms grew more centralized and militarized. The balance of power that had allowed their republics to flourish became a liability in the face of aggressive expansion. Economic shifts also played a part. In Mesopotamia, the rise of large empires like Babylon and Assyria brought new administrative demands, pushing smaller, community-based systems to the margins. The Code of Hammurabi, while groundbreaking in its time, became a tool for centralized control rather than a framework for collective governance. So, what lessons can we draw from these stories of decline? One key takeaway is the importance of adaptability. Many of these systems faltered because they failed to evolve in the face of changing circumstances. The Roman Republic, for instance, clung to outdated structures that no longer addressed the needs of its people. Similarly, the Iroquois Confederacy struggled to adapt to the rapid changes brought by European contact. Another lesson is the danger of inequality. When power and resources become concentrated in the hands of a few, the foundations of democracy begin to erode. The Roman Republic's downfall was hastened by the growing divide between the wealthy elite and the disenfranchised masses, a warning that remains relevant today. Yet, even in their decline, these early democracies left behind a legacy. Their struggles remind us that governance is not a static concept but a living, evolving process. The fall of the Roman Republic, for example, inspired later thinkers to advocate for checks and balances, while the Iroquois Confederacy's emphasis on consensus continues to influence modern political thought. This raises an important question: how can modern democracies avoid the pitfalls of the past? Perhaps the answer lies in rediscovering these ancient systems, not as relics of a bygone era but as sources of inspiration. By studying their successes and failures, we can better understand the challenges we face today and the possibilities for creating more resilient, inclusive systems of governance. And speaking of rediscovery, the story doesn't end with decline. Many of these early democratic ideas were preserved, adapted, and revived in later centuries, shaping the world we know today. But how did these forgotten systems resurface, and what can their revival teach us about the enduring power of democratic ideals? That's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. The story of democracy doesn't end with the decline of ancient systems. It's a story that continues to unfold, thanks to the tireless work of archaeologists and historians. Over the past century, groundbreaking discoveries have brought these forgotten experiments in governance back into the light, reshaping our understanding of how societies organized themselves long before the modern era. From the deciphering of ancient texts to the excavation of long-buried sites, these findings offer a window into a world where democracy took many forms, each uniquely adapted to its time and place. One of the most significant breakthroughs came with the deciphering of cuneiform tablets in Mesopotamia. For centuries, these clay tablets sat in silence, their wedge-shaped inscriptions holding secrets of a bygone age. But in the mid-19th century, scholars like Henry Rawlinson cracked the code, unlocking a treasure trove of information about laws, trade, and governance. The Code of Hammurabi, for instance, was among the first major discoveries, revealing a sophisticated legal system that sought to balance power and protect the vulnerable. Historians have since pored over these texts, piecing together how Mesopotamian leaders navigated the complexities of ruling a diverse and dynamic society. But it's not just written records that tell the story. In Iceland, archaeologists have uncovered the physical remains of Viking Thing sites, where free men once gathered to debate laws and settle disputes. At places like Thingvellir, the All Things meeting place, researchers have found evidence of assembly structures and artifacts that paint a vivid picture of how these gatherings functioned. What's remarkable is how these sites align with the sagas, those rich oral traditions that have been passed down through generations. The Iroquois saga, for example, describes the All Thing in detail, and modern excavations have confirmed many of its accounts, bridging the gap between myth and history. Yet, piecing together these ancient systems isn't without its challenges. Many of these societies left behind fragmented records, and their oral traditions often blend fact with legend. Historians and archaeologists must navigate these complexities, using every tool at their disposal, from radiocarbon dating to linguistic analysis, to reconstruct the past. As Dr. Emily Carter, a leading archaeologist, notes, each discovery is like a puzzle piece. Sometimes it fits neatly into the picture we're building. Other times it forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew. These findings have done more than just fill gaps in the historical record. They've reshaped our understanding of democracy itself. For centuries, the story of governance was dominated by the achievements of ancient Greece and Rome. But now we know that democratic principles emerged in far more places and forms than previously imagined. From the Iroquois Confederacy's emphasis on consensus to the Mahajanapadas' decentralized republics, these systems challenge the notion that democracy is a Western invention. Instead, they reveal a global tapestry of governance, woven from countless threads of innovation and adaptation. What's equally fascinating is how these ancient systems continue to influence modern governance. The Viking Thing, for instance, is often cited as a precursor to modern parliamentary systems, while the Iroquois Confederacy's principles of shared leadership have inspired movements for greater inclusivity and accountability. Even the Code of Hammurabi, with its emphasis on written laws, echoes in today's legal systems, reminding us of the enduring importance of transparency and justice. This raises a compelling question. How can we apply the lessons of these ancient systems to the challenges of modern governance? As we face issues like political polarization and climate change, perhaps the key lies in rediscovering the values that underpin these early democracies, values like cooperation, adaptability, and a commitment to the common good. The past, it seems, still has much to teach us. As we move forward, let's turn our attention to another dimension of this story, the role of technology in shaping governance. From the earliest writing systems to the digital age, how has technology influenced the way societies organize themselves? And what might the future of democracy look like in an increasingly interconnected world? These are questions we'll explore next. The echoes of ancient democratic experiments resonate far beyond their time, shaping the foundations of modern governance in ways we often overlook. Consider the United States Constitution, a document hailed as a cornerstone of democracy. While its roots are often traced to Enlightenment thinkers like Locke and Montesquieu, its debt to the Iroquois Confederacy is equally profound. Benjamin Franklin, one of America's founding fathers, was deeply influenced by the Iroquois system of governance. He famously remarked on the wisdom of their Grand Council, where leaders from 6 nations came together to make decisions through consensus. This model, emphasizing shared leadership and checks on power, left an indelible mark on the framework of American government. But the Iroquois Confederacy isn't the only ancient system that shaped modern democracy. Across the Atlantic, the Magna Carta of 1215 is often celebrated as a milestone in the struggle for individual rights and limited government. Yet, its principles, like the idea that no one is above the law, can be traced back even further to ancient legal codes like Hammurabi's. The Magna Carta's emphasis on accountability and justice didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was built on centuries of experimentation with governance from Mesopotamia to medieval England. As political theorist John Locke later observed, the end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. This sentiment, rooted in ancient traditions, continues to guide democratic thought today. These connections raise an important question. Why do we so often overlook these ancient influences? Perhaps it's because history is rarely told as a continuous thread, but rather as isolated chapters. Yet, when we pull back the curtain, we see a rich tapestry of ideas, each woven into the next. The Athenian assembly's emphasis on citizen participation, the Viking Thing's commitment to collective decision-making, the Mahajanapadas' balance of power, all these systems contributed to the evolution of democracy as we know it. What's striking is how these ancient principles remain relevant today. In an era of political polarization and growing distrust in institutions, the values of consensus, accountability, and shared responsibility are more important than ever. The Iroquois Confederacy's emphasis on unity, for example, offers a powerful lesson in navigating divisions. Similarly, the Magna Carta's reminder that power must be checked resonates in debates about executive authority and civil liberties. So, how can we better acknowledge these influences? One way is through education, by teaching the full story of democracy, not just its Western origins but its global roots. We can foster a deeper appreciation for the diversity of human ingenuity. Another is through policy. Drawing inspiration from ancient systems, we might explore new ways to balance power, ensure representation, and build more inclusive institutions. As we reflect on these connections, it's worth asking, what can we learn from the past as we shape the future of democracy? The answer lies not in mimicking ancient systems, but in understanding the values that made them work. From the Iroquois Confederacy to the Magna Carta, these experiments remind us that democracy is a living, evolving process, one that requires constant care and adaptation. With this in mind, let's turn our attention to another dimension of democracy, the role of technology. From the earliest writing systems to the digital age, how has technology influenced the way societies organize themselves? And what might the future of democracy look like in an increasingly interconnected world? These are questions we'll explore next. As we stand at the crossroads of modern governance, grappling with issues like polarization, inequality, and distrust in institutions, it's worth asking, what can ancient democracies teach us about navigating these challenges? The answer lies not in replicating their structures, but in understanding the principles that made them work. From consensus building to shared accountability, these early experiments offer timeless lessons that resonate powerfully today. Take consensus building, for example. The Iroquois Confederacy's Grand Council didn't rely on majority rule, but on finding common ground among its members. This approach, rooted in the belief that every voice matters, offers a stark contrast to the winner-take-all mentality that often dominates modern politics. In a world increasingly divided along ideological lines, the Iroquois model reminds us that lasting solutions emerge not from silencing opposition, but from fostering dialogue and understanding. Movements like participatory budgeting, where communities collectively decide how public funds are spent, draw directly from this principle, proving that ancient ideas can spark modern innovations. Then there's the question of representation. The Mahajanapadas of ancient India ensured that leaders were elected and held accountable by their communities, creating a system where power was a responsibility, not a privilege. This idea of representation as stewardship of leaders serving the people rather than ruling over them echoes in grassroots movements today. From citizen assemblies addressing climate change to community-led initiatives tackling local issues, these efforts reflect a growing desire for governance that's not only inclusive but also deeply connected to the needs of the people it serves. Accountability, too, is a thread that runs through these ancient systems. The Code of Hammurabi, with its emphasis on clear laws and proportional consequences, sought to create a society where everyone was answerable for their actions. While the specifics of the code may seem harsh by modern standards, its underlying principle that those in power must be held to the same standards as everyone else remains as relevant as ever. In an era where transparency and trust are in short supply, this ancient commitment to fairness offers a blueprint for rebuilding public confidence in our institutions. But perhaps the most profound lesson is the adaptability of these systems. The Viking Thing, for instance, evolved to meet the needs of its time, balancing tradition with the demands of a changing world. This flexibility, born of necessity, is something modern democracies could learn from. As we face unprecedented challenges like climate change and technological disruption, the ability to adapt, to rethink how we govern and who gets a say will be crucial. These ancient systems also challenge us to think differently about power. In many ways, they were less about control and more about collaboration, about finding ways to work together in the face of shared challenges. This spirit of collective responsibility is evident in contemporary movements like the Global Assembly, which brings together ordinary citizens from around the world to deliberate on issues like climate justice. By drawing on ancient principles of participatory governance, these initiatives show that democracy isn't just a system of rules. It's a way of life rooted in the belief that we're stronger when we work together. So, how can we apply these lessons to the challenges we face today? One answer lies in reimagining what governance looks like. Perhaps it's time to move beyond rigid structures and embrace more fluid, inclusive approaches, ones that prioritize dialogue over division, collaboration over control, and shared responsibility over individual gain. By looking to the past, we might just find the tools we need to build a more resilient and equitable future. And as we consider these possibilities, it's worth reflecting on a final question. What would it look like to truly empower communities in shaping their own futures? The answer lies in the concept of participatory governance, a modern evolution of ancient principles that puts decision-making power directly in the hands of the people. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. Imagine a world where every voice truly matters, not just in theory but in practice. This isn't just a modern dream, it's a principle that traces back to some of the earliest democratic experiments. From the Viking Thing to the Iroquois Grand Council, ancient systems of participatory governance offer a blueprint for how we might reimagine democracy today. These systems weren't about distant representatives making decisions on behalf of the people. They were about the people themselves shaping the future of their communities. What can we learn from these ancient models as we confront the challenges of modern governance? Let's start with the Viking Thing, a system where free men gathered under open skies to debate laws and settle disputes. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a ritual of collective decision-making rooted in the belief that every voice had value. Fast forward to today, and we see echoes of this approach in citizen assemblies, where ordinary people come together to deliberate on pressing issues like climate change or healthcare. Take the Citizens' Assembly in Ireland, for example. In 2016, this group of randomly selected citizens played a pivotal role in shaping the country's policies on abortion and climate action. Their recommendations weren't just advisory, they were taken seriously by lawmakers, demonstrating how direct participation can bridge the gap between the public and those in power. But participatory governance isn't limited to physical gatherings. In the digital age, technology has opened up new possibilities for involvement. Platforms like Decide Madrid or Taiwan allow citizens to propose, debate, and vote on policies online, creating a virtual agora where participation knows no borders. These digital democracy tools aren't just about convenience, they're about inclusivity, giving people who might otherwise be excluded from traditional political processes a chance to have their say. As political scientist Dr. Sarah Thompson notes, digital platforms can democratize decision-making in ways that were unimaginable even a few decades ago. They allow us to scale participation without sacrificing depth or deliberation. Yet, scaling these systems isn't without its challenges. How do we ensure that digital platforms remain accessible to all, especially those without reliable internet or tech literacy? And how do we prevent these tools from being co-opted by special interests or overwhelmed by misinformation? These are questions that require careful thought and perhaps a return to the values that underpinned ancient systems. The Iroquois Confederacy, for instance, built its governance on consensus and mutual respect, ensuring that decisions served the common good rather than individual agendas. Could these principles help us design more equitable and effective digital systems? Another key to unlocking the potential of participatory governance lies in education. Just as the Viking Thing relied on law speakers to guide deliberations, modern systems need informed and engaged citizens who understand the issues at hand. This isn't just about teaching people how to vote. It's about fostering critical thinking, empathy, and a sense of civic responsibility. Schools, community organizations, and even digital platforms can play a role in building this foundation, equipping people with the tools they need to participate meaningfully in shaping their societies. As we look to the future, it's clear that the lessons of the past are more relevant than ever. From the open-air assemblies of the Vikings to the digital town halls of today, the core idea remains the same. Governance works best when it's rooted in the voices and values of the people it serves. The challenge now is to adapt these ancient principles to the complexities of our modern world, and to do so in a way that's inclusive, equitable, and truly democratic. And as we consider the role of education in empowering citizens, another question emerges. How can we ensure that the next generation is equipped to carry forward the legacy of participatory governance? The answer lies not just in teaching history, but in creating opportunities for young people to experience democracy in action, to see first and how their voices can shape the world around them. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. Education has always been a cornerstone of democracy, but its roots run deeper than you might think. Long before modern classrooms or standardized curricula, ancient civilizations understood that an informed citizenry was essential for effective governance. Take Mesopotamia, for instance, where the invention of writing wasn't just a tool for record-keeping, it was a revolutionary step toward democratizing knowledge. Scribes trained in the art of cuneiform weren't just bureaucrats, they were the gatekeepers of wisdom, ensuring that laws, trade agreements, and cultural stories were preserved and accessible. This emphasis on literacy wasn't just about practicality, it was about empowering people to participate in their society's growth and governance. In ancient India, education took on a different but equally vital role. The Mahajanapadas, those early republics we've discussed, placed a high value on learning and debate. Schools, often attached to temples, taught not just religious texts but also philosophy, mathematics, and governance. Students were encouraged to question and discuss, fostering a culture of critical thinking that was essential for their participatory systems. The Upanishads, for example, are filled with dialogues that mirror the kind of public discourse needed in a thriving democracy, a back-and-forth exchange of ideas, where wisdom emerges through conversation rather than decree. But education in these ancient systems wasn't just about individual learning, it was about building a collective sense of purpose. In Mesopotamia, public announcements of laws ensured that even those who couldn't read were informed. Town criers would stand in busy squares, reciting the code of Hammurabi so that everyone understood their rights and responsibilities. This practice created a shared understanding of justice, binding the community together through common knowledge. Similarly, in ancient India, the oral tradition of storytelling kept cultural and moral lessons alive, ensuring that values were passed down through generations. These ancient approaches to education offer valuable lessons for modern democracies. Today, as we grapple with issues like misinformation and political apathy, the importance of an educated and engaged citizenry has never been clearer. Schools and universities play a crucial role, but so do libraries, community centers, and even social media platforms. Just as Mesopotamian scribes made knowledge accessible, we now have the tools to ensure that information reaches everyone regardless of their background. But education isn't just about access to information, it's about fostering the skills needed to navigate that information critically. Ancient systems remind us that democracy thrives on dialogue and debate. In the Mahajanapadas, students weren't just passive recipients of knowledge. They were active participants, challenging ideas and refining their understanding. This spirit of inquiry is something we can cultivate today, whether through classroom discussions, public forums, or online platforms that encourage thoughtful engagement. As we look to the future, it's clear that technology will play an increasingly important role in shaping how we learn and govern. From digital archives that preserve ancient texts to online platforms that facilitate global conversations, the tools we have at our disposal are more powerful than ever. But with this power comes responsibility. How can we ensure that technology serves as a force for education and empowerment rather than division? The answer may lie in the values that underpin those early systems, values like inclusivity, transparency, and a commitment to the common good. These ancient foundations remind us that democracy isn't just a system of governance. It's a way of life built on the belief that everyone has the right and the ability to contribute to their society's future. By drawing on the lessons of the past, we can create a more informed, engaged, and equitable world. And as we continue to explore the intersection of education and democracy, it's worth asking, what role will technology play in shaping the next chapter of this story? That's a question we'll explore next. Technology has always been a double-edged sword in governance, a tool that can empower or exploit, depending on how it's wielded. Long before the age of blockchain and artificial intelligence, ancient civilizations were grappling with similar challenges, using the tools of their time to manage information, ensure transparency, and build trust. Take cuneiform tablets, for instance. These clay records, etched with wedge-shaped symbols, weren't just a way to track trade or inventory. They were a revolutionary leap in how societies organized themselves. By recording laws, contracts, and decisions, Mesopotamian leaders created a system where accountability wasn't just a lofty ideal. It was baked into the very fabric of governance. Imagine standing in the bustling streets of Babylon, where towering stone steels displayed Hammurabi's code for all to see. It was a bold statement. The law belonged to everyone, not just the powerful few. But Mesopotamia wasn't alone in its technological innovation. In the Andes, the Inca Empire used quipus knotted strings of various colors and lengths to record everything from census data to tax records. These intricate devices weren't just administrative tools, they were a form of communication, a way to transmit complex information across vast distances. What's remarkable is how these systems prioritized transparency and accessibility. Public announcements, town criers, and communal gatherings ensured that even those who couldn't read or decode quipus were kept informed. It was a kind of ancient open data designed to foster trust and participation. Fast forward to today, and we see echoes of these principles in modern technologies like blockchain. At its core, blockchain is about creating a transparent, tamper-proof record of transactions, a digital ledger that anyone can verify. Just as cuneiform tablets made laws public and quipus provided a shared understanding of resources, blockchain promises a new kind of accountability. Governments and organizations are already exploring its potential, from tracking supply chains to securing voting systems. But here's the question: can blockchain, like its ancient counterparts, truly democratize governance? Or does it risk creating new barriers, favoring those with access to technology and expertise? Artificial intelligence, too, is reshaping how we think about governance. From predictive policing to automated decision-making, AI has the potential to make systems more efficient and responsive, but it also raises ethical concerns. How do we ensure that algorithms, often opaque and complex, don't perpetuate biases or undermine human judgment? Ancient systems remind us that transparency and accountability aren't just technical challenges, they're moral ones. The Code of Hammurabi, for all its flaws, was rooted in the belief that laws should be clear and accessible. Can we say the same about the algorithms shaping our lives today? This raises a broader question. How do we balance the benefits of technology with the need for ethical governance? Ancient civilizations didn't have all the answers, but they offer valuable lessons. Their systems were designed to adapt, to evolve with the needs of their people. Today, as we navigate the complexities of AI and blockchain, perhaps the key lies in fostering the same spirit of innovation and responsibility. And as we consider the role of technology in shaping governance, it's impossible to ignore the human element. After all, technology is just a tool. It's the people who use it who determine its impact. This brings us to the heart of the matter, the role of leadership in navigating these challenges. How can leaders ensure that technology serves the common good, rather than entrenching power or deepening inequality? These are questions we'll explore as we turn to the next chapter of our journey. Leadership in ancient democratic systems was never about wielding unchecked power. It was about service, accountability, and a delicate balance of authority. Unlike the autocrats or monarchs of later eras, leaders in these early systems were often chosen by their communities, tasked not with ruling over them but with serving their needs. This distinction between rulers and servants offers a profound lesson for modern governance. How did these ancient leaders manage to strike this balance? And what can we learn from their approach today? Take the Roman Republic, for instance. At its height, Rome was governed not by a single ruler but by two consuls, elected annually by the citizens. These leaders weren't just figureheads, they were bound by strict rules and checks on their power. The Senate, composed of Rome's elite, provided oversight, while the assemblies of the people ensured that the consuls acted in the public interest. This system of shared authority wasn't just about preventing tyranny, it was about fostering collaboration and mutual respect. As the Roman historian Livy observed, the Roman Republic was built not on the power of one, but on the wisdom of many. But the Romans weren't alone in their approach to leadership. Across the Atlantic, the Iroquois Confederacy operated under a similar principle. Here, leaders known as sachems were chosen by clan mothers, women who held significant influence within their communities. These sachems weren't rulers, they were representatives tasked with voicing the concerns of their people in the Grand Council. What's remarkable is how this system balanced tradition with accountability. Sachems could be removed from power if they failed to serve the community's needs, ensuring that leadership remained a responsibility rather than a privilege. These systems remind us that leadership at its core is about stewardship. Ancient democracies didn't elevate individuals above the community. They placed them within it, creating a structure where power was shared and decisions were made collectively. This approach stands in stark contrast to the winner-take-all mentality that often dominates modern politics. As political theorist Hannah Arendt once noted, power is never the property of an individual. It belongs to a group and remains in existence only so long as the group keeps together. What's equally fascinating is how these ancient systems managed to balance tradition and innovation. The Roman Republic, for example, evolved over centuries, adapting its structures to meet the changing needs of its people. The Iroquois Confederacy, too, remained resilient by valuing consensus and adaptability. These examples challenge us to rethink how we approach leadership today. Could modern democracies benefit from a similar emphasis on shared responsibility and collective decision-making? This raises an important question. How can we apply these ancient lessons to the challenges of modern governance? One answer lies in reimagining the relationship between leaders and the people they serve. Instead of viewing leadership as a position of authority, we might see it as a role of service, a commitment to listening, learning, and acting in the best interests of the community. Movements like participatory budgeting, where citizens directly decide how public funds are spent, reflect this shift, drawing on ancient principles to create more inclusive and responsive systems. As we reflect on these models, it's worth considering the role of collective decision-making in shaping the future of democracy. After all, leadership isn't just about individual vision. It's about creating spaces where diverse voices can come together to find common ground. From the Roman consuls to the Iroquois sachems, these ancient systems remind us that the strength of democracy lies in its ability to connect, collaborate, and adapt. And as we turn our attention to the concept of collective decision-making, another question emerges. How can we ensure that these processes remain inclusive and effective in an increasingly complex world? The answer may lie in the lessons of the past, as we explore how ancient systems fostered collaboration and trust among their people. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. Collective decision-making has always been at the heart of democracy, but the way ancient societies approached it might surprise you. These early systems weren't just about casting votes or debating policies. They were about building consensus, fostering dialogue, and ensuring that every voice had a place at the table. Take the Athenian ecclesia, for example. This assembly of citizens, often numbering in the thousands, wasn't just a forum for debate. It was a living, breathing expression of democracy itself. Picture the scene: ordinary Athenians, from farmers to artisans, gathering on the Phoenix Hill to discuss everything from war to trade. Decisions weren't made by a select few, but through the collective will of the people, a system that demanded both participation and accountability. Yet, the Athenian model wasn't without its flaws. Women, enslaved people, and non-citizens were excluded from the process, a reminder that even the most celebrated systems of governance have blind spots. Still, the ecclesia's emphasis on direct participation offers a powerful lesson for modern democracies. In an era where voter turnout is often low and trust in institutions is eroding, could we rekindle that spirit of collective engagement? Across the Atlantic, the Iroquois Grand Council offers another fascinating example of collective decision-making. Here, leaders from 6 nations came together not to compete but to collaborate, guided by the principle of consensus. Unlike the Athenian system, which relied on majority rule, the Iroquois approach required unanimous agreement. This wasn't about silencing dissent but about finding common ground, a process that could take days, even weeks, but ultimately led to decisions that everyone could support. The result was a system that balanced unity with diversity, proving that even the most complex challenges can be resolved through dialogue and mutual respect. But what made these ancient systems work? One key factor was their emphasis on inclusivity. While they were far from perfect, both the Ecclesia and the Grand Council recognized that governance is strongest when it reflects the voices of the people it serves. Another was their commitment to transparency. Whether through public debates in Athens or the open deliberations of the Grand Council, these systems ensured that decision-making wasn't hidden behind closed doors. The benefits of collective decision-making are clear. It fosters trust, encourages participation, and creates solutions that are more likely to stand the test of time. But it's not without its challenges. Consensus building can be slow and laborious, and it requires a level of patience and cooperation that's often in short supply in today's fast-paced world. So, how can modern societies adapt these ancient practices to meet contemporary needs? One possibility lies in hybrid models. Imagine a system that combines the efficiency of representative democracy with the inclusivity of direct participation. Citizen assemblies, for instance, offer a way to bridge this gap, bringing together diverse groups of people to deliberate on specific issues. These assemblies, already being tested in places like Ireland and France, draw on the best of ancient wisdom while addressing the realities of modern governance. Yet, as we explore these possibilities, it's impossible to ignore the role of conflict resolution. After all, collective decision-making isn't just about reaching agreement, it's about navigating disagreements in a way that strengthens rather than divides. Ancient systems like the Iroquois Grand Council excelled at this, using rituals and protocols to ensure that even the most contentious debates remained respectful and productive. This raises an important question. How can we bring these principles of conflict resolution into modern governance? The answer may lie in creating spaces where dialogue and understanding can flourish, whether through community forums, mediation programs, or even digital platforms designed to foster collaboration. As we reflect on these ancient systems, one thing becomes clear: the challenges they faced weren't so different from our own. The key difference lies in their approach, a commitment to collective decision-making that prioritized participation, transparency, and mutual respect. By learning from their example, we might just find new ways to address the challenges of our time, building a future where democracy isn't just a system of governance but a way of life. And as we consider the role of conflict resolution in shaping this future, another dimension of this story emerges: the importance of fostering unity in the face of division. How can we create systems that not only resolve conflicts but also strengthen the bonds that hold societies together? That's a question we'll explore next. Conflict resolution has always been a cornerstone of democratic governance, and ancient systems offer timeless lessons in how to navigate disputes with fairness and wisdom. Take the Code of Hammurabi, for instance. This ancient legal code didn't just list punishment, it aimed to create a framework for resolving conflicts that felt just and proportional. Imagine a farmer whose livestock damaged a neighbor's property. Under Hammurabi's laws, the dispute wouldn't escalate into a feud. Instead, it would be settled through clear, predetermined consequences. The principle of an eye for an eye might seem harsh today, but at its core, it was about ensuring that justice wasn't arbitrary. It was a system built on accountability, where everyone understood the rules and the consequences of breaking them. But conflict resolution wasn't just about laws, it was also about dialogue. The Viking Thing, for example, was more than a legislative body, it was a forum for mediation. Picture a group of free men gathered under open skies, their voices rising and falling as they worked to settle disputes. Unlike modern courts, where decisions are often handed down by a single judge, the Thing relied on collective deliberation. Both parties presented their cases, and the assembly worked to find a resolution that satisfied everyone. This wasn't just about enforcing rules, it was about restoring harmony to the community. What made these ancient systems so effective? One key factor was their emphasis on transparency. In Mesopotamia, laws were carved into stone steels for all to see, ensuring that no one could claim ignorance of the rules. In the Viking world, the Thing's open-air gatherings made the process of justice visible and accessible. These practices fostered trust, creating a sense that the system was fair and impartial. Another strength lay in their adaptability. Ancient societies understood that conflict resolution wasn't one size fits all. The Code of Hammurabi, for example, included different penalties for different social classes, reflecting the complexities of its time. While this might seem unjust by modern standards, it shows an awareness that fairness requires context. Similarly, the Viking Thing allowed for flexibility, with decisions often shaped by the unique circumstances of each case. These ancient methods hold valuable lessons for modern systems. Today, as we grapple with issues like political polarization and social inequality, the principles of transparency, dialogue, and adaptability are more relevant than ever. Could modern legal systems benefit from more public deliberation like the Viking Thing? Could mediation practices, rooted in restoring relationships rather than assigning blame, help address the deep divisions in our societies? One promising example is restorative justice, a modern approach that draws on ancient principles. Rather than focusing solely on punishment, restorative justice brings together victims, offenders, and community members to discuss the harm caused and find ways to repair it. This process, much like the Viking Thing, prioritizes dialogue and mutual understanding, offering a path toward healing rather than retribution. As we reflect on these ancient systems, it's impossible to ignore the role of storytelling in conflict resolution. In many cultures, stories weren't just entertainment. They were tools for teaching, mediating, and preserving the values that held communities together. From the sagas of the Norse to the parables of the ancient Hebrews, storytelling helped people make sense of their experiences and find common ground. This raises an intriguing question: how can storytelling shape modern governance? Could narratives help bridge divides, fostering empathy and understanding in an increasingly polarized world? The answer may lie in the power of stories to connect us, reminding us of our shared humanity and the common challenges we face. And as we turn our attention to the role of storytelling in governance, another dimension of this story emerges: the ways in which culture and tradition shape the systems we create. How do the stories we tell about ourselves influence the way we govern? And how can we draw on these narratives to build a more inclusive and equitable future? These are questions we'll explore next. Storytelling is more than just entertainment. It's a cornerstone of how societies govern themselves. In ancient democracies, narratives weren't just tales to pass the time. They were tools for teaching laws, preserving history, and reinforcing shared values. Think about it. Long before written laws or constitutions, communities relied on stories to communicate what mattered most. These narratives, passed down through generations, shaped the way people understood their roles, their responsibilities, and their connections to one another. Take the Iroquois Confederacy, for example. Their oral traditions weren't just about recounting the past, they were a living, breathing part of their governance. The great law of peace, the foundation of their political system, was preserved through storytelling. Elders would share the story of how Daganowida and Hiawatha brought the 5, and later 6, nations together, emphasizing the principles of unity, consensus, and mutual respect. These stories weren't just history lessons, they were moral guides, reminding people of the values that held their society together. In Mesopotamia, storytelling took a different but equally powerful form. Epic poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh weren't just literary masterpieces, they were reflections of societal values and challenges. Gilgamesh's journey, grappling with mortality and the search for meaning, mirrored the struggles of a civilization navigating the complexities of life, death, and leadership. These stories, often recited in public gatherings, reinforced the idea that even kings were bound by the same human limitations as everyone else. They reminded people that leadership wasn't about unchecked power, but about humility, wisdom, and service. What's remarkable is how these ancient narratives continue to resonate today. The stories we tell, whether through books, films, or social media, still shape how we see the world and our place in it. They influence our values, our politics, and even our sense of identity. This raises an important question: how can modern storytelling strengthen democracy? Could narratives that highlight cooperation, empathy, and shared responsibility help bridge the divides in our societies? One possibility lies in the concept of cultural memory, the way societies remember and interpret their past. In ancient systems, storytelling was a way to preserve this memory, ensuring that lessons learned weren't forgotten. The Iroquois didn't just tell stories about their founding, they used those stories to guide their decisions, reminding leaders of their duty to serve the people. Similarly, Mesopotamian epics weren't just about heroes, they were about the collective struggles and triumphs of a civilization. Modern democracies could draw on this approach, using storytelling to foster a deeper connection to our shared history and values. Imagine a world where political debates were framed not just around policies but around the stories of the people they affect, where leaders used narratives to inspire unity rather than division. Where the lessons of the past were woven into the fabric of our present, guiding us toward a more inclusive and equitable future. This brings us to the next chapter of our exploration, the role of cultural memory in shaping governance. How do the stories we tell about our past influence the way we govern today? And how can we ensure that these narratives reflect the diversity and complexity of our shared experiences? These are questions we'll delve into as we continue our journey through the history of democracy. Cultural memory is the soul of a civilization, a way to preserve not just the past, but the values that define who we are and how we govern. Ancient democracies understood this deeply, embedding their principles into the very fabric of their societies through art, architecture, and rituals. Take the Parthenon in Athens, for example. Its friezes weren't just decorative, they were visual narratives celebrating the city's democratic ideals and its connection to the gods. Every carved figure, every intricate detail served as a reminder of the virtues Athens held dear: wisdom, justice, and the collective strength of its citizens. These symbols weren't just for show, they were tools for teaching, ensuring that democratic values were passed down through generations. Across the Atlantic, the Iroquois Confederacy used wampum belts to preserve their political and cultural memory. These belts, woven with intricate patterns of shells, weren't mere ornaments. They were living records of treaties, laws, and stories. Each bead and design held meaning, encoding the great law of peace and the principles of unity and consensus that guided their governance. When leaders gathered, these belts were brought out, their patterns read aloud to remind everyone of their shared commitments. It was a system of memory that didn't rely on written words but on the tactile, communal act of storytelling. What's striking about these examples is how they transformed abstract values into something tangible, something that could be seen, touched, and shared. The Parthenon's friezes and the Iroquois wampum belts weren't just relics of the past, they were active participants in their societies, shaping how people understood their roles and responsibilities. They remind us that democracy isn't just a set of rules or institutions. It's a living tradition, one that requires constant care and renewal. But preserving cultural memory isn't without its challenges. For one, it requires a society to prioritize its values and invest in their expression. Ancient Athens poured immense resources into its architecture, seeing it as a reflection of its identity. The Iroquois devoted time and skill to crafting wampum belts, understanding their role in maintaining unity. These efforts weren't incidental, they were deliberate acts of preservation, rooted in a belief that democracy is worth protecting. Modern societies face a similar challenge. How do we preserve the democratic values that define us? One answer lies in education. Just as ancient civilizations used art and rituals to teach their values, we can use schools, museums, and public spaces to keep these principles alive. Monuments, for instance, can serve as modern-day friezes, reminding us of our shared history and the ideals we strive to uphold. Digital platforms, too, offer new ways to preserve and share cultural memory, creating archives that are accessible to all. Yet, there's another layer to this story, the role of interpretation. Ancient symbols and artifacts don't speak for themselves, they require people to engage with them, to bring them to life through understanding and dialogue. The Parthenon's friezes, for example, might mean little without the stories that accompany them. Similarly, the Iroquois wampum belts rely on oral tradition to convey their messages. This interplay between artifact and interpretation is crucial, reminding us that cultural memory is a collaborative effort, one that requires both preservation and participation. This brings us to the challenges of studying these ancient systems. Time, distance, and the fragmentary nature of historical records make it difficult to fully grasp how these societies preserved their values. The Parthenon's friezes, for instance, are incomplete, their stories pieced together from scattered remnants. The Iroquois wampum belts, too, have suffered losses, their meaning sometimes obscured by the passage of time. These gaps remind us that cultural memory is fragile, vulnerable to the forces of history and neglect, but these challenges also offer opportunities. Every fragment we uncover, every story we reconstruct, helps us better understand how ancient civilizations sustained their democracies and how we might do the same. By studying their methods, we can learn not just about the past, but about the ways we can preserve and strengthen our own democratic heritage. As we reflect on the role of cultural memory in governance, another question emerges. How do we ensure that these efforts are inclusive, reflecting the diversity of voices that make up our societies? The answer lies in embracing the lessons of the past while adapting them to the realities of the present. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. Studying the ancient roots of democracy isn't just an academic exercise, it's a journey into the unknown, filled with gaps, biases, and the occasional mystery. Imagine trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing, and the ones you have might not even belong to the same picture. That's the challenge historians face when exploring forgotten democratic systems. From incomplete records to the biases of those who recorded them, the path to understanding is anything but straightforward. Take the Phoenicians, for example. Their contributions to governance are often overshadowed by their reputation as traders. But what little we know about their political systems comes from fragmented records and accounts written by their rivals. The Greeks and Romans, who viewed the Phoenicians as competitors, often painted them in a negative light. As a result, our understanding of their democratic practices is filtered through the biases of their enemies. How much of what we think we know is accurate, and how much is shaped by these ancient prejudices? This problem isn't unique to the Phoenicians. Across the ancient world, records were often written by the powerful for the powerful. The Code of Hammurabi, for instance, gives us a glimpse into Mesopotamian justice, but it's a one-sided view. What about the voices of the marginalized, the women, the enslaved, the poor? Their perspectives are largely absent from the historical record, leaving us with an incomplete picture of how these systems truly functioned. As historian Dr. Maria Lopez notes, to study ancient democracy is to grapple with silence. The gaps in our knowledge are as telling as the records we have. Even when records do survive, they're often open to interpretation. The Viking Thing, for example, is described in sagas that blend history with myth. Were these gatherings as inclusive as the stories suggest, or were they idealized versions of a more complex reality? Without physical evidence to corroborate these accounts, historians must tread carefully, balancing the stories with archaeological findings and comparative studies. Cultural biases also play a significant role in shaping our understanding. For centuries, Western scholars viewed democracy as a uniquely Greek invention, dismissing or downplaying democratic practices in other parts of the world. The Iroquois Confederacy, for instance, was long ignored or misunderstood, its influence on modern governance only recently acknowledged. This Eurocentric perspective has left many ancient systems overlooked or misinterpreted, skewing our understanding of democracy's global roots. So, how can we address these challenges? One approach is to embrace interdisciplinary methods, combining archaeology, anthropology, and even oral traditions to fill in the gaps. By listening to the stories passed down through generations, we can gain insights that written records alone can't provide. Another is to critically examine our own biases, asking how our modern perspectives might shape the way we interpret the past. As Dr. Lopez puts it, the study of ancient democracy isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about understanding ourselves. These challenges remind us that history is never static. Each discovery, each reinterpretation adds a new layer to the story. And as we continue to explore these forgotten systems, we're not just piecing together the past, we're shaping the future of democracy itself. By learning from the successes and failures of these ancient experiments, we can build a more inclusive and equitable vision of governance, one that reflects the diversity of human experience. As we turn our attention to the future, it's worth asking, how can we ensure that the lessons of the past guide us forward? The answer may lie in reimagining democracy not as a fixed system, but as an evolving process, one that adapts to the needs of each generation while staying true to the principles of justice, equality, and shared responsibility. But that's a story for the next chapter of our exploration. As we look to the future of democracy, it's worth asking, what can the past teach us about building a better tomorrow? The ancient experiments in governance we've explored, from the Iroquois Confederacy's consensus building to the Viking Thing's open-air assemblies, offer more than just historical curiosity. They provide a blueprint for addressing some of the most pressing challenges we face today. Inclusivity, transparency, and adaptability weren't just ideals for these civilizations, they were practical necessities woven into the fabric of their societies. How can these timeless principles help us reimagine democracy for the 21st century? Consider inclusivity, a cornerstone of many ancient systems. The Iroquois Grand Council, for instance, ensured that every nation and every voice had a seat at the table. This wasn't just about fairness, it was about survival. By valuing diverse perspectives, the Iroquois created a system that could adapt to changing circumstances and withstand external pressures. Today, as we grapple with issues like political polarization and social inequality, this principle feels more relevant than ever. Futurist Dr. Amara Patel argues, inclusivity isn't just a moral imperative, it's a strategic one. Societies that embrace diverse voices are better equipped to navigate complexity and uncertainty. Transparency, too, was a hallmark of ancient governance. The Code of Hammurabi, displayed on stone steels for all to see, ensured that laws were clear and accessible. Similarly, the Viking Thing's public gatherings made the process of justice visible, fostering trust and accountability. In our digital age, transparency takes on new dimensions. Blockchain technology, for example, offers a modern twist on Hammurabi's steels, creating tamper-proof records that anyone can verify. But as political theorist Dr. James Carter warns, transparency without understanding can lead to confusion. We need systems that not only share information but also make it meaningful. Adaptability is perhaps the most striking lesson from these ancient systems. The Mahajanapadas of ancient India, for instance, thrived by decentralizing power, allowing local councils to respond quickly to the needs of their communities. This flexibility proved vital in a world of shifting alliances and external threats. Today, as we face challenges like climate change and technological disruption, adaptability is equally crucial. Could decentralized governance, inspired by the Mahajanapadas, help us create more resilient systems? These ancient principles aren't just theoretical, they're already shaping modern innovations. Take participatory budgeting, a practice that empowers citizens to decide how public funds are spent. Rooted in the Iroquois emphasis on collective decision-making, this approach has been adopted in cities from Porto Alegre to New York, proving that ancient ideas can spark modern solutions. Similarly, digital platforms like Taiwan are reimagining the Viking Thing for the internet age, creating spaces where citizens can debate and decide on policies in real time. But adapting these lessons for the future isn't without its challenges. As we integrate technology into governance, we must ensure it serves the common good rather than deepening divides. The Iroquois emphasis on consensus reminds us that democracy isn't just about efficiency, it's about fostering relationships and building trust. Similarly, the Mahajanapadas' decentralized approach shows that power must be balanced with accountability, ensuring that local autonomy doesn't lead to fragmentation. So, what does the future of democracy look like? Perhaps it's a hybrid model, blending ancient wisdom with modern tools. Imagine a world where citizens' assemblies, inspired by the Iroquois Grand Council, work alongside digital platforms to tackle global challenges. Where transparency, rooted in Hammurabi's laws, is enhanced by blockchain technology, and where adaptability, learned from the Mahajanapadas, allows societies to evolve in the face of uncertainty. The ancient systems we've explored remind us that democracy isn't a fixed system, it's a living process, shaped by the values and needs of each generation. By drawing on their lessons, we can build a future where governance is more inclusive, transparent, and adaptable. a future where democracy isn't just a set of rules but a way of life, rooted in the belief that we're stronger when we work together. As we close this chapter of our exploration, it's worth reflecting on the words of political theorist Dr. Elena Martinez. The history of democracy isn't just a story of progress, it's a reminder of what's possible when we dare to imagine a better world. The ancient systems we've studied offer more than just lessons. They offer hope. Hope that by learning from the past, we can create a future where democracy thrives, not just for a few, but for everyone. As we near the end of our journey through forgotten democracies, it's time to pause and reflect on what these ancient systems can teach us. From the consensus-driven Iroquois Confederacy to the open-air assemblies of the Vikings, each of these civilizations offers a unique lens through which to view governance. What stands out most is the sheer diversity of democratic experiments, proof that democracy isn't a one-size-fits-all concept, but a flexible framework that adapts to the needs of its people. These systems weren't perfect, but they remind us that governance is a living, evolving process, shaped by the values and challenges of its time. One of the most striking takeaways is the importance of inclusivity. Whether it was the Iroquois clan mothers selecting leaders or the Viking Thing ensuring every free man had a voice, these systems thrived by valuing diverse perspectives. This wasn't just about fairness, it was about survival. In a world where resources were scarce and external threats loomed large, cooperation wasn't optional, it was essential. Today, as we face global challenges like climate change and inequality, this lesson feels more relevant than ever. Could embracing a wider range of voices help us find more innovative and equitable solutions? Another key insight is the power of transparency. The Code of Hammurabi, displayed publicly for all to see, ensured that laws were clear and accessible. Similarly, the Viking Thing's open-air gatherings made justice visible, fostering trust and accountability. In our modern world, where transparency often feels elusive, these ancient practices challenge us to rethink how we communicate and enforce rules. Transparency isn't just about sharing information, it's about building trust, a foundation that every democracy needs to thrive. Adaptability, too, emerges as a recurring theme. The Mahajanapadas of ancient India thrived by decentralizing power, allowing local councils to respond quickly to the needs of their communities. This flexibility proved vital in a world of shifting alliances and external pressures. Today, as we navigate rapid technological change and social upheaval, adaptability is equally crucial. Could decentralized governance inspired by ancient models help us create more resilient systems? Perhaps the most profound lesson is the enduring relevance of these ancient systems. They challenge us to rethink our assumptions about governance, reminding us that democracy isn't just about elections or political parties, it's about finding ways for communities to thrive together. From the Iroquois emphasis on consensus to the Viking Thing's commitment to collective decision-making, these systems offer timeless principles that resonate across centuries. They remind us that democracy isn't a fixed set of rules but a living tradition, one that requires constant care and renewal. So, what does this mean for us today? How can we apply these ancient lessons to the challenges we face in our own lives and societies? The answer lies in embracing the values that underpin these early systems, values like inclusivity, transparency, and adaptability. By learning from their successes and failures, we can build a future where governance isn't just about power but about service, where decisions are made not by the few but by the many. As we prepare to conclude our exploration, let's take a moment to reflect on the journey we've taken together. From the fertile plains of Mesopotamia to the rugged fjords of Scandinavia, we've uncovered a rich tapestry of democratic experiments, each with its own story to tell. These forgotten systems may have faded into history, but their lessons remain alive, offering us a roadmap for building a more just, equitable, and resilient world. And as we turn to the final chapter of our story, one question lingers. How will we carry these lessons forward, ensuring that democracy continues to evolve and thrive for generations to come? So, where does this journey through forgotten democracies leave us? As we've seen, democracy didn't begin in a single place or time. It emerged in countless forms, each shaped by the unique needs and values of its people. From the consensus-driven Iroquois Confederacy to the open-air assemblies of the Vikings, these ancient systems remind us that governance is a deeply human endeavor, one that thrives on inclusivity, transparency, and adaptability. They weren't perfect, but they were bold experiments in how societies might organize themselves to serve the many, not just the few. Understanding these early systems isn't just about satisfying historical curiosity, it's about appreciating the long, winding path that brought us to where we are today. Democracy, as we know it, didn't spring fully formed from the minds of ancient philosophers or revolutionary leaders. It's the product of centuries of trial and error, of voices rising and falling, of ideas being tested and refined. As political theorist Dr. Elena Martinez puts it, to study the history of democracy is to discover its fragility and its resilience. It's a reminder that governance is never finished, it's always evolving. This journey also challenges us to think differently about democracy itself. It's not just a set of rules or institutions, it's a way of life rooted in the belief that power belongs to the people. Whether it's the Iroquois emphasis on consensus or the Mahajanapadas' decentralized republics, these ancient systems show us that democracy can take many forms, each reflecting the values and challenges of its time. And as we face our own challenges, climate change, inequality, technological disruption, their lessons feel more relevant than ever. So what can we do with this knowledge? First, we can carry these lessons forward, using them to reimagine what governance might look like in the 21st century. Perhaps it's time to embrace more participatory models, inspired by the Iroquois Grand Council, or to build systems that prioritize transparency and accountability, like the Code of Hammurabi. Second, we can share these stories, ensuring that the voices of these forgotten civilizations aren't lost to history. After all, their struggles and successes are part of our shared heritage, a reminder of what's possible when we dare to imagine a better world. As we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with a thought from historian Dr. Maria Lopez. Democracy isn't a destination, it's a journey, and like any journey, it's shaped by the footsteps of those who came before us. These ancient systems may have faded into history, but their legacy lives on in the principles we uphold, the systems we build, and the conversations we have about what governance should be. If this journey through forgotten democracies has sparked your curiosity, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What lessons from these ancient systems resonate most with you? How do you think we can apply their principles to the challenges we face today? Share your ideas in the comments below. I'll be reading every one. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into historical mysteries, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Together, let's keep exploring the stories that shape our world. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. Until next time, stay curious.